Welcome to the Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Mosi Thurlow scale,
or MOTS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Good evening, and welcome to the Lost Signals Reviews Film and Television. My name is Chris Morgan, and I am here with Jonathan Ian Manzur.
He's a magic man.
Stephen Ormosi.
Hello.
And Scott Thurlow.
Got some nice potions, stranger.
And tonight, we have reviewed Ingmar Bergman's 1958 classic, The Magician. And does anybody have a funny log line?
Yeah, well, I've come up with Come Along for Van Helsing's Magical Mystery Tour.
My favorite album.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Mr. Manzur, would you like to continue with the plot?
So a group of, or a troupe of con men and
women.
And women. And supernatural, with some supernatural powers and some fraudulent powers. They end up in a town where the local elites are interested in disproving that they have any supernatural powers at all, and they kind of play tricks against each other in a way, and
They're playing mind games
and sleep around the entire manor, and eventually everything works out because some of them move on in the troupe, but others are going to the royal palace to perform for the king, and that's the plot of this film.
The devil, as they say, is in the details.
Mm-hmm.
It is, but that's the thing, is that narratively, like, this was a very clever and idea that he had that was stylistically pulled off, but it's a very loose narrative thread that abruptly ends in a way that's a conclusion, but not necessarily the logical conclusion to this. But
I feel you.
Well, it worked overall, but I'm going to give it a 2 because, again, it didn't have the strongest narrative. It's more about style.
Yeah, it was bare bones, I want to say, in terms of the plot.
Oh, structure.
It was all well done, and the humor in it definitely helps pull the story along. But it's not the most intense or deepest or complicated plot. There's just a lot of interconnected scenes that go really well together and form a kind of feeling that this movie has, which is really well done. I think this might be the first Bergman film that I'm seeing all the way through, which is, I know, probably blasphemy of some sort, but
certainly, and this is the first one I've seen too.
Yeah.
So.
I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would for it. And like what I really loved, especially like when I first started watching this movie, was kind of noticing the differences in how they approach doing the plot to this movie as opposed to like an American movie from this era. And I think that this was actually much more ahead of its time in terms of like how American movies operated. You don't see many movies from the 50s in America that even go into a lot of the topics that they kind of go into in this movie. So I really enjoyed that about it too.
So I'm just going to jump in quickly to say that you get some of the backstory of this troupe, and it feels like any time frame, like this was over a couple of days,
like a week maybe or less.
You slice any week of their existence, and it would be an interesting story.
Some shit like this happened.
The camera was on them at this point, and that's why it really never felt. I feel the conclusion was because you feel that the main couple in this, they've had their ups and downs, and they've been in prison, but they've also been with royalty, and now they almost went to prison, and now they can be with royalty again. It's just one of the peaks and valleys you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree. I was going to give it a 2, and I don't have any reasons to give it a 1 or a 3. Yeah, like, it's not quite vignettes. Like, as you mentioned, Steve-O, they're all interconnected, but there's, like, scenes of one person doing this with somebody else, and then it cuts to like the Dr. Vogel is the main guy,
Right.
and his wife, who masquerades as like his understudy or whatever. So yeah, and like it's them like being quote unquote invited or basically ushered into a bourgeoisie a house, and then in which they are forced to almost perform, and the doctor is there, and like the high elites, like basically the intelligentsia, trying to disprove them. And like, yeah, it's amusing. There's some good gags and jokes for sure. And like a Bergman film is like almost always like this. They have like vague metaphysical sort of conversations, or at least some of the things that people say can be taken like that in that way. And yeah, it's fine. You're right, E. It's sort of like an abrupt like, hey, come to the palace now. The end. Like, okay, I guess. But
And
yeah.
we're on to our next adventure.
Yeah, exactly. So like it's all fine. It holds together pretty nicely throughout. So I'm looking at a solid-ish 2 for plot.
I agree. And the one thing I have wanted to tell the three of you since I recommend this, but decided not to, is basically the whole movie is a setup for a punchline.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
because it is, because you've got these little vignettes, so to speak. You've got like a little story of each of the characters. And it's like it does come to the upstairs downstairs kind of thing where like you have all the servants in the troupe having supper in the kitchen, and various bits of deception go on there, but overall everybody's kind of true to who they are. It's just like, oh yeah, you have this love potion that's really nothing.
It's all snake oil.
But it gets these two lovers together.
Sure.
And the other two, so it's
One guy gets rat poisoned.
one guy gets rat poison to get him out of the way. There's a little foretelling from Vogel's mother about, the murderer will go and hang himself in the laundry room, and
Sure.
but yeah, narrative wise, to be completely objective, it is not like one of his strongest narrative through lines, but it is designed.
It's good enough.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a setup for a punchline.
Sure.
But again, it's a film that I love, but the 2 is not based upon quality or interest. It's definitely of a narrative approach.
Yep, I feel you. I think it's about right.
Yeah. And Steve-O, would you like to talk about the themes in this?
Sure. So I was trying to think about what I was going to say for this, and like there's, there's the interesting theme going through of like the deception of the main troupe and kind of who they are. Like you don't really know who they are even throughout the whole movie. Vogel doesn't speak until 2/3 of the way
or
through
more.
the movie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even at that, he barely says anything, except for a couple words to his wife, and then who was also like deceiving everyone, acting as a man, as a very unbelievable man. In fact, I wanted to say like at the beginning,
Isn't that a woman?
like
Yes.
I do.
no, I wanted to say like, is that his wife? And it turned out it was. And,
yeah.
like,
I want to say, is that a woman playing a man, like on like to make it a more feminine character, or is this a woman masquerading as a man?
yeah.
Yeah.
It turned out, that was the case.
Yeah, but so you had like every character, and I think on both sides, every character had their deceptions. Like I love when they get the police chief's wife to out him. Like that's a hilarious scene.
Yeah.
But it's just, I think it kind of lays bare the like the contrast between like the making your living off deception and just the everyday deception of everyday people. And like there's the guy and his wife, who his wife they've slept in separate rooms since their child died.
The rich
right?
manor
Like,
owner guy. Yeah.
and they're trying to put on whatever front they're trying to put on. She comes and like tells all her secrets to the magician, right? And like the doctor who like refuses to admit that he's scared of things. Like every character has their deception. I think that's really the big running thematic through line in this. And I think that it does a really good job of giving each one of the characters their own kind of place in that theme, in what they're doing there. So.
No, I get you. Like I was gonna say, like maybe not humorously, but like science versus mysticism, because that's sort of like vaguely there, but it's not. I don't think it's that much of a theme per se. It's sort of like the framework, like I said. But no, I think you're right. Like the lies that people tell themselves and each other, and again, in the nature of the story. So there was, if you guys remember, there was a very early, I think in the first scene, even when they're in the wagon, like coming to town, someone was reading a book about like how there's no truth in the world.
Right.
Like they have it's very like, it seems all those pseudo philosophical shit, and like that's always a hallmark of Bergman films. In case you're unfamiliar with that, like it's going to be the case always. So yeah, like I do think that Steve-O, that's a good theme, and it was certainly present and commented upon and done well throughout, as you mentioned, sort of via the facets of each character. So I'll probably give it a 1.
All right, you mentioned the Science versus Religion, or Mrs. Something. They do go into it often, and with the pseudo-philosophical talks, the drunk who is on his deathbed plays, and you see 3 of his death scenes.
Yeah,
over the course of
quote unquote dies a number of times.
But he's most like philosophical. Well, what does it mean to be alive, and what does it mean to die, and what happens afterwards, and like. Vogel, you're watching me die because you're interested in knowing what happens afterwards. You have the doctor, Dr. Van Helsing here, who plays the same role that Van Helsing does in a lot of these kind of things, with denying anything but the rationality. And
everything can be explained.
The reason I think that he said it wasn't as prominent is because I don't think they came to the conclusion that is often done with this kind of characters.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Scared at the end, but it's by a magic trick. It's by deception of switching bodies. We've seen in this movie supernatural things happening. A brandy zombie.
Brandy ghost.
There is hypnotism here. I mean, a lot of it is kind of. Is it a trick? Is it real? But it seems that there's a sense that at least some of it is real, and like so, the Dr. Van Helsing is never confronted with that supernatural part, and that's one of the things where I think it fails on that theme.
On the front, yeah.
But on the deception one, it's very interesting.
What I like about the title, The Magician, is because the whole time his wife is like saying, basically, we're smoke and mirrors, we're using magnets and everything. But at the same time, the bourgeoisie is trying to prove that they're frauds, even though she's been kind of giving all the secrets and trying to mock him. But at the same time, through him, certain truths are
revealed.
Revealed, like the woman and her husband who haven't slept together. It takes that confrontation to kind of bring them together in a way, and it is a lot about deception. It's a lot about truth, and like that you can find truth in deception, and you can find deception in truth, and so forth, like that.
Like when he drops his veil and is completely unrecognized by the woman who had just said he was her soulmate like the night before, right? Like that type of stuff is really great.
Hi, we're nothing. We have nothing. Blah, blah, give me your shilling. And he drops a shilling, and then boom. It's just like
invited by the king.
Yeah, he's wanted by the king. I mean, it basically is a long gag, but he as magician functions as an illusionist to a certain degree. He does bring out the truths in people. He does bring out the deceptions in people. I mean, it's aptly named The Magician because you can look at it several ways. And, of course, there's that always mystical thing, with, him looking for the magician himself looking for truth in the one guy who's probably the brandy zombie. He's probably the most earnest, truthful character in the entire.
He just wants some brandy.
He just wants some brandy.
And to die.
He knows that the brandy has killed him, and the brandy is going to kill him, but he's happy for it. But
the best part about that is he's the guy that has like lived his life as an actor, right? He's
that's true.
The one who's
he's also
like
deceiving, if you will.
The one who's supposed to be
that's
deceptive,
right?
Yeah,
good point.
But he was a bad actor.
But
he
does say
actor.
even in death now he can be realistic, if you will.
Believe me.
Yeah.
And the thing I like about the abrupt ending is that they're sitting in the wagon, the coach, and basically grandma's left. The one guy's God, I can't remember his name.
Tuber or something like that.
Yeah, he's left. And so you think that's kind of like, and the two little lovers, the one woman's running off with the coach driver. And it's just like, okay, well, this is the tattered remains, and and all of a sudden this last thing comes in, and it's just like, it is more and less than what they are, and it's
Sure.
it's kind of like I said, you kind of have to sit with it because there's a lot of details and very little that goes on, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, the movie never ceases to amaze me, and that I can sit back and say, okay, let me think about the ending again, because this is like the third time I've seen it,
Right.
and I haven't seen it in a long, long time. And again, I'm sitting at the end, I'm like, okay, let me piece this back together. I can't wait to talk about it, because there is all these little components to it. And right when you think it should end, with them somberly, the four of them driving off, boom, here comes some kind of validation from the king.
Not only the driving off, but then the police are arriving.
Yes.
And then it turns out that they're not here
They're
to
like
be arrested.
escorting them. yeah.
Another deception.
Yeah, sure.
But Bergman's the real deceptor here.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's the real
Screw
magician.
You, sir.
So,
what
I mean,
are you
I'm
giving it, Ian? I wasn't
one,
sure.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Me too.
I just gave the kind of a theme that failed, but I agree. I think the major thing they're going for worked really well.
good. And Scott, would you like to talk about the antagonist?
Swedish police chief Wiggum. Now, he was a comical character for sure. So, this is a kind of a tricky one in this spot because, what was everyone antagonized by? You might say the troop was somewhat being antagonized by the bourgeoisie, and then vice versa in a sense. But it wasn't it's weird because there was some undercurrent of animosity, I guess I'll say, but not outright. So I don't know. Maybe I'll open up to you guys first. I'm sort of leaning towards kind of a 0 because a lot of this would go already folds back into themes almost. So we just gave it credit there. So I'm not sure how to parse it, how to cut this one up. So if you guys got any,
I was just going to say that we should have really talked about the class warfare in themes, and I don't want to get into a whole big thing about that, but
it was there, but not again. It wasn't the major point.
It was to a certain extent because it just kept coming back to it.
They did mention it a couple times, sure.
I think Chris, you brought up earlier, there's a stark division between where everyone, what their place was in the society.
Yeah.
And it's tense from the beginning because the troop's only there because the doctor wants to prove them as frauds, and the wife wants them to to contact her daughter who had died recently. They're there because they're forced. The troops there because they're being forced to be there. They can't say no to this. To work in this town, they had to get permission from the elites. And yes, there's animosity between them. The one guy thinks, "Oh, I'm getting invited to dinner. No, go down to the kitchens."
Yeah.
But towards the latter half, it starts building up to when is this going to go? Actually,
come to a head.
There is a simmer going on here. You see the animosity, especially when they embarrass the police chief in front of. It's and now they discovered they had a dead body, which I understand. You find a nice dead body, and
you find a guy in the forest.
You have a coffin with that you can swap. You
false
might need that.
bottom, yeah.
So they discovered that they carried around and had the scientists the doctor do an autopsy on the fake dead body. So you're oh, something's going to go wrong really bad. And it doesn't. But does that mean that there wasn't that simmer there?
Right, I get what you mean, right? So,
well, I don't know where this falls into it, but if you're going to look at, all right, so basically everybody's come with their own motivations, and basically the doctor and Wiggum, basically were the ones who orchestrated this for humiliation. The woman, the woman's husband really was just kind of a bystander. The woman was wanted to contact her dead daughter, but what happened was it's kind of like the good were rewarded, because these two found each other again, after their daughter died.
Yeah, I get it. Sure.
And basically, these other two are humiliated. So if you're going to personify the antagonists, it would probably be the doctor and Wiggum, who basically did get their comeuppance.
Hold on. Are we calling the woman who tried to cheat on her husband and the guy who immediately struck her as soon as he found out the good ones in this story?
Yes.
Yes. In this story,
it's relative, Steve.
Well, because, and I'm not going to defend somebody who's trying to cheat on her husband, or somebody who even inadvertently or unintentionally, without any kind with an emotion strikes his wife. But by the same token, they basically were separated on adversity, by a trauma, and basically in a weird way they were brought together by trauma. My whole point is their intent at the beginning was not malicious, is what I'm going to say.
Sure.
Whereas the police chief and the doctor, their intent at the beginning was to humiliate these people. They did have some malice to them. So they were the ones who were embarrassed, and the other ones, well, I don't know what you do with poisoning somebody with rat poison. I think he was kind of...
It made him sick. It didn't kill him, at least.
Yeah.
But like I said, to me, it's like if you're going to personify the antagonists, as maybe catalysts, it would definitely be who orchestrated this the evening
sure.
would have been the doctor and the police chief. They were they orchestrated the whole thing.
I'd agree with that.
That's a fair point, I think, and I think I might roll with that as well.
I think more so the doctor, even than the.
I think he was
chief.
the instigator, and the police chief was sort of
the
like
police chief seemed more like
his henchman almost.
Yeah.
Instigator's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
or even like the comic relief like sidekick to the villain. But I thought that the doctor was a pretty good antagonist in terms of this flick. I don't know if I'm going to try and convince anybody otherwise if you don't think so, but I thought that he did a really good job as the I don't want to say motivator, because he wasn't really a motivator, but he was the reason he kind of underlied all of the struggle and the antagonism that was going on throughout this film.
I'll also give one more point to him. If it was just him trying to be intellectually superior to others and to prove his own worth, that's one thing. He was also trying to steal Vogel's wife away from him.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
And not in an adulterous way, in a very lecherous, I'm a better man than Vogel, I can give you a better life. He doesn't be in prison, that kind of thing. So it was that
more
part
menacing.
made it a little bit more antagonistic to Vogel as well.
That's a good point.
Added stakes to it.
That's a good addendum there.
Yeah.
So I'll probably end up, for all that you said, giving it a fairly decent one in the antagonism role.
Okay. Everybody else giving it one as well?
Yep.
All right.
Okay, and it's to me with protagonist, and this one's kind of interesting because Vogel doesn't really speak, as we've just talked about, 3/4 of this film, but his wife and Trubor, what's his name?
Tubor, his sort of announcer showman guy.
The kind of in a way acted as the Greek chorus.
Yeah.
She was basically saying this is smoke and mirrors. He's presenting it as the wonders of
the greatest show in the world.
Yeah. And then Granny just kind of floated between the two.
Crazy old Granny. I love her.
So it's because it's one of these things where I'm is Vogel the true protagonist, or is it kind of the combination of these 3 or 4 characters?
I think it's mostly the latter. At least that's how I'm looking at it as well.
That's the issue I was having while we're watching the movie. I'm
It might not be the whole truth, but I think it's at least those ones that you mentioned for sure. I don't think it's just Vogel himself. And like you said, they sort of speak on his behalf, if you will, even though he's not really mute. But in order to keep up the deception, as you were saying, he does not speak till much later. And he says 2 lines to him at the end as well, to the doctor and the chief. So they're interesting enough characters. And I think maybe taken together, you can combine them all to all the protagonist role. I give them each maybe 1/3 credit or something, adding up to a 1. I've set precedent for that, so I'm doing it here, kind of.
It's 4 of the. It would be the troop that's the protagonists here. They each have arcs of sorts.
Kind of, yeah. I see what you mean.
I'll skip Vogel. I'll do Vogel last one. But you have his wife, which perhaps has the least arc, but in a sense, it's admittedly that her admits herself that her arc is wrapped up with Vogel's.
True.
That she won't leave him for a more stable life because I think she desires the adventure, just like most of the women in here do. You have Trubor,
Tubor, I think.
Trubor.
Barnum and Bailey. Barnum and Bailey.
Swedish Barnum and Bailey.
Yeah, he is. For as bombastic as he is for everything, he gets whipped immediately by the cook in the manor. Yeah. And good for him. She is running him down.
Down to earth. Ration.
Two ball.
Sure.
2-ball, yeah.
And you got
come to my room
Sable Boy.
again.
Yeah. I'm coming, dear.
Yeah, but like that's not like the strongest arc, but it is a fulfilled arc. And then Granny, who may actually be a witch, she seems to have some level of supernatural powers, but also is a con man for selling fake potions. Made enough money to retire and got out of the life. Everyone has a.
She's got to go.
Yeah, and Vogel,
Granny's
who
got the
I
gold.
think is a much stronger character when he wasn't speaking, and as he has facial hair, taking his voice back. He became a less powerful character, which is interesting to me.
I loved that about him, about the character, though. It was like, because throughout the whole beginning of the movie, I was like, this guy, there was something about it where it was like going over and over in my head was kind of, this is not like a full portrait of a human being. And then as soon as he started to talk and like drop the facade, you kind of got an idea of, because he did a great job of like portraying that mysterious quality when he wasn't talking, but he also did a really great job of dropping that facade and like being a human, like begging for money at the end, and like, you know, it's a really great 180
sort of reversal,
that they pulled there.
And then 180 back again.
Yeah,
sort of.
Yeah,
It's all about the mustache.
I definitely am going to give protagonist a 1. I don't have too much more to say other than what.
No,
you said,
me neither. I think you guys sort of convinced me a bit more, at least made more stronger points to give them collectively, at least the core troop, if you will, a 1. Because you know, while they had different arcs to varying degrees, they did indeed have arcs, and at least a few of them I thought were well done.
Yeah, I agree. Everybody 1?
Yep, I think so.
And I like the point you made that like the Vogels basically were one unit. And essentially their arc was 1 unit. Okay, and Ian, secondary character, sir.
The facial hair.
It was everywhere.
Oh, it is tremendous. I think that the supporting characters were very strong, very weird at times. Like it's not.
They're quirky,
they're not, they're but it's a kind of grounded quirkiness.
Yeah, exactly.
To
That's
it,
a
which
very
is
wonderful. Good way to say it.
It's not like they're all believable that they exist, even if a couple of them are over the top. But yeah, so like the entire kitchen staff, the coachman, the one really strange guy with a unibrow. Let me say this goes to the style, but
That poor guy.
Bergman having characters turn corners
Yeah, and come around
perhaps
corners.
the greatest thing in the world.
I was going to mention that if you didn't, so I'm glad you did.
Yeah, I was waiting for that in style, but it's noticeable and it works.
But that adds to these characters, like just
like
I don't
lurking
know,
around and shit.
Oh, and Brandy Zombie. That character is the biggest laugh I've had in a long time.
When he runs in, steals the brandy, and runs out.
The ghost stole our brandy, man.
They're like, "Where's the brandy?"
No, it's because you don't know what's happening. There's like it's quick cuts and like this monster running in, and it's just so they can steal something off the table, and it turns out to be the brandy, and it's like yes,
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Hey,
It's a great.
guy got his death brandy.
And I like how he's just like looking to the table.
Yeah. It's a great gag for sure, and it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh no, I mean, like how you said, they were over the top quirky, but also grounded. I think that's a perfect way to describe them. Yeah, they were very, very enjoyable. And again, like while not maybe as fleshed out, of course, as the troop that we just said, or even like the rich house owners and and their doctor friend, like they were still an enjoyable part. And if it was just like the troop versus the doctor and the police guy, like it wouldn't have been as as enjoyable as it was. And like it was a nice ensemble, if you will. So yeah, I probably enjoyed like you had Sophia was the kitchen, the cook that you said that two ran off with, and then I guess her 2 daughters are like the kitchen maids as well, like which one takes the quote unquote love potion and then spends the night with the troop's stable or the horse driver, and then she runs off with the troop as well at the end, etc. Yeah, so like it was all pretty damn well done, and like they were funny, and like there were serious parts and funny parts to the characters, and it all pretty much worked.
There's certain things I want to describe in this, like about Sophia, for instance. So one where they're showing like close to the 2 people sitting at the table, and it cuts to the people across them at the table talking, and it's back and forth. And then it just cuts to Sophia on the other end with a guitar.
Yeah.
It's time for a song.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
It's
it
so
may
absurd
not
out of
sound
nowhere.
funny, outright, but just the way that it's filmed was magical.
Yeah.
So also Sophia, I'm pretty sure bought what's his face Tolbar or whatever. Yeah,
that's the
she
funny...
paid him. She was like, keep your potions.
Yeah,
just meet me in my room later.
Yeah, that's right. Good point.
Exactly. She took to what's going on right away, and she's like, "Yeah, leave the potions."
Yeah, but I
the potions
right.
take the cannoli, I guess. But...
I thought like a lot of detail was paid, or a lot of attention was paid to little details in these characters, and it made them so good.
Yeah.
Just you got little laughs out of them, or little moments of, understanding out of them that, in a lot of movies you don't get because they're
take the time
paying
to do that.
attention to the main characters and not paying attention to the little small details on the side. So I thought that Bergman did a really good job in this one, and hats off. I'm going to give that a 1.
Yeah, I'm giving him a 1 as well.
I agree. I don't really have much to say. I was going to bring up the guitar, but
no, I mean that's like the most style and characters, but yeah, it was a very funny moment.
That was amazing. Well, I mean that's the thing about Bergman is like one of the reasons that The Seventh Seal is probably like one of my top 3 favorite movies isn't just because it may be cliche, is because this is where he blends, where he would blend comedy and something serious, and it's more of a line balance, for lack of a better word. It's more, whereas this one's kind of a little all over the place, where you're never sure. And this is one of the reasons it is considered one of his comedies, because there's these slapstick moments.
Yeah, exactly.
There are these moments of true insight. And then there's just overall human interaction, and that's one thing I like about the supporting staff. To say the downstairs is they are so human.
Yes.
So I agree.
Yeah,
I think that's
very well done.
Alrighty, and Steve-O, it's to you with dialogue.
All right. So I really enjoyed the dialogue of this film. It had those philosophical moments that we've mentioned already. It had really humorous moments.
Had some good jokes for sure. It's a good banter.
Well done. I mean, I assume it's a really good translation because everything.
Yes, to be fair, it is subtitled.
Everything came off as making perfect sense, which doesn't always happen with subtitled movies. And
also, because it's comedy, like tone plays a huge important thing. And that
exactly.
came across really well.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. Like the tone is perfectly transitioned from the original to the English language version, and it's just I think a really well written script, or a really tight script in terms of the dialogue, if not always 100% the tightest plot in the world. I think a lot of attention is paid to the small interactions that happen in this film, and that is going to be a 1 for me for dialogue.
That's pretty much what I was going to say. The detail, like you and Chris mentioned it, that the interactions, the moment to moment stuff, and when it's time for a funny levity joke, or if it's time for a pseudo philosophical exchange, it all works on either front. And like you said, Chris, it sort of sine waves itself between those things anyways. So it's damn solid. It's not the most mind-blowing shit, but it's very, very strong, and I'm going to give it the credit it's due on the dialogue front. And it was a good translation as well, it seemed.
I have to quickly jump in.
Okay.
I think all 3 of you at some point in this podcast have used the phrase pseudo philosophical.
Yeah, well, it makes sense to me. There's no other way to describe it.
I'm gonna say it's not pseudo philosophical. I think there are some moments of
of real philosophy.
Good philosophical,
some of it comes off as such, but I think on purpose.
Generally, I find you pseudo philosophical. So you
well, then we're just down a rabbit hole now.
Yeah, I'm giving you a 0.
Well, that's the thing, is because there's some. I mean, there's definitely some earnest philosophical elements, but the characters themselves are spewing
sometimes because they're fucking frauds, and I think that's part.
Sure.
That's all I'm saying.
So I don't think either way is wrong.
Sure.
Because
it works on either
both
front.
are happening at the same time.
Agreed. Like I said, so
and the one thing I have to say is the first 2 times I saw this were before Criterion got a hold of it. So with each iteration with VHS, DVD, and now it's just every time I see this movie, I've actually gotten more of the dialogue just because of the way the subtitles were against the sharpness of or lack of clarity of the picture. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to mention that just in the subtitles themselves.
So two quick things. Grandma's song.
Yes, the quote unquote lullaby. Yeah, go on.
About a soldier getting murdered or like murdering
the
people.
juxtaposition of the lyrics and what it's supposed to represent is amazing.
Mhm.
Second of all, I'm going to give a very obscure reference for this, but the Brandy Zombies death scenes remind me a lot of Buzz's death in Earthbound.
Yeah, that is very specific.
So if anyone out there who gets that, good on you.
That's what it feels like. But yeah, I'm giving dialogue a 1.
Me too.
I think you all are.
Yes.
I put ones in for everybody.
Yeah, very nice.
Excellent. And Scott, to you with style.
Yeah, man. So if anyone out there is unfamiliar, it's black and white, and it's chiaroscuro, I would say a lot. Like if you know that term, it's very sharp shadows. Like it almost feels like, or can look like sort of the old school, like 1930s, 40s monster movies that we did for Halloween.
Yes.
Like kind of like that. Like even the sets like kind of feel kind of small. Like there's a castle or there's a mansion, whatever. But it's not quite like that same exact thing. But it can on the surface look like that. But yeah, one of you mentioned like characters will be lurking around corners or behind a doorway or whatever, like half obscured, and like they just pop in or like someone will say their name and like he'll be like they'll show up. It's like yeah, it's clearly the Bergman style is pretty recognizable. Like he had it own, he was quite competent at using those elements. So yeah, it all looks perfectly fine. Like it again takes place in a very smallish area, like a house essentially. So there's not like a lot of, I guess, variation in the scenery. But what the scenery is there is used quite well. Like for example, the attic thing when Vogel comes out of the coffin.
Most bizarre attic.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's all again like it's all sharp contrasting shadows like for the most part, and across characters' faces. So it's light and dark, alternating, and yeah, it works really really well. It's hard to describe, but when you see it, it's quite striking. So
it's weird. This movie, there is this really like forward-looking directorial style, but then there's also these moments where it has these strange quirks of movies that that were coming out around that time,
yeah.
Right? Like that just feel strange now to watch. Like
certain parts can feel dated a bit, I guess. We'll say.
Like I mean, even some of those like coming around the corner scenes they're hilarious, but like because they almost feel like a parody of themselves at this point,
yeah.
right? Like
I see what you mean here.
And with the rest of the film, like the use of shadows, the use of the sharpness of the shots in the film seems like so far. Like you mentioned the old monster movies that we watched for Halloween last year, and like the sharpness of the shots and like the framing seems so far ahead of like what they were doing in those movies. Yeah, granted, like that's why it's weird to see like. Actually, even the sets I think were a lot better. But like you see those shots that are like. They do like one shots of like somebody's face, and it's like kind of the same, like this weird middle range shot, and you're like, what? Like I thought we weren't doing this anymore. Like Bergman, like I like because you see a lot of. I think that you see a lot of his influence in like movies that have come since then, even up to today. You see like shots from this movie, and I'm sure from other Bergman movies that like. You didn't really see in older movies like from this age or like before. So it seems like this was kind of inventing shit as it went, but also borrowing from the library of previous films.
Sure.
I absolutely love the style of this, but like I said, like there were parts of it that like, kind of pulled me out. I was like, shit, what's that fucking coming around the corner scene? It's just hilarious to me because.
The reason I think it's hilarious the way they do all over the corner shots, and the one where she raises the zombie. The thing is, it's like the person. So there's no hesitation between.
Feels like a Scooby Doo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But no, it's like come here. It's instantaneous. The guy rushes from right out of frame.
Yeah,
and the point it just seems so like. And I think
it's almost
intended to be
surreal.
comical.
Yeah, it is for sure.
It's like everyone's just ready to pounce from.
I've seen one. It was like, what was the guy's name that ends up hanging himself? They're like,
Anson
come in here, Anson,
Eyebrow.
and then he just like immediately comes around the corner, like, hello.
He was just waiting for that moment to happen, like the whole fucking time. But sure, yeah. I mean, like it can seem maybe a bit jarring, but it still works really well. Is what I'm saying.
No, I don't think it's. I think it's supposed to be jarring. I think it's because it's meant to be a comedy.
Right.
It's meant to have that effect of like because I laughed heavily at it, and he's so good.
It's a purposeful thing
that it has to. I imagine it has to be intentional.
Yeah.
But so going to comedy movies for a second. I think this works really well as comedy. Works on many different levels, whether you're dealing with the slapstick elements, which not too much of it, but it does exist.
I mean, there's some gags here and there, sure.
There's weird the grandma's song, which I mentioned, which the lyrics don't match the tone of what's going for. You drive humor from that. It works on a lot of different levels, and it also plays around with the very serious thing. Man commits suicide in this.
Yeah,
True.
So a drunk old failed actor dies and is resurrected as a zombie. But also, when he doesn't go for the flesh, he goes for the brandy.
Yeah.
Like it works on quite a lot of levels.
To the brains, he says brandy, but But anyway,
a couple things. I mean, because I agree with everything you said. Is my single favorite shot in the movie is the woman who tried to seduce
the wife of the rich dude.
There's a shot where you see a couch, and basically most of the people are wearing tuxedos at this point, and everything's in dark except for his shirt, his or her, because I can't remember if Mrs. Vogel was revealed to be a woman, if she was out.
Yeah.
But you don't know who that is for a moment, and then his face comes into light, and the man's been crying. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was like so stunning because at first you didn't know what it was. It may be ominous or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then he pulls out and there's this very, very human, very, very touching moment, which I thought was a great contrast to everything that had happened. I just absolutely positively love that shot. And given the time when it was and when it sound, I thought the sound design in this was also very good. Even if it was like rattling,
or like
whatever it was they used to the tin to make the thunder outside, or the clocks, just the footsteps on the wood and everything. There was just such a great homey. That was like the sound of his films. When they use it really well. Excuse me, films of this use it really well. Even when they didn't have the microphones we have today or something like that, I just think really adds to the overall tone. And that's basically
when they get back when the elite bourgeois couple gets back together. After she's like, "Can you stop the clock?"
Right.
Yeah. That kind of thing. So he adds the elements of sound design into the thematic things he's going for.
Yeah, good call.
I also want to quickly mention they play a lot of stuff for laughs. I am pretty happy that they didn't play Vogel's wife dressing up as a man for laughs in this. And in fact, they played that.
It was
really
part of the
straight.
deception. The series,
and that's very strange to see. Like this wasn't something that you would see in an American movie at the time.
True. Yeah. Good call.
So I really enjoyed that portion of it. I was trying to figure out what the hell was going on at the beginning of the movie, because if you're watching a movie from the 1950s and it's an American movie, there's something very weird going on, or they're gonna just go all out, making this a joke later on in the movie, and they don't do that at all in this film.
Yeah, here's the joke: man dresses up as woman, woman dresses up as man. Ha ha ha! There's the joke.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't need anything else.
That's exactly what Some Like It Hot was.
Yeah,
I was gonna say I wasn't on that one, but I had seen it. Anybody here like Someone Like It Hot?
Count yourself lucky that you were not on it.
No, I've seen it before.
I
did not score it well.
Like It Hot,
as I recall.
The first time I saw it, I didn't like it as much when we watched it for this.
It wasn't that cool.
Show.
But anyway, so I think it's a 1 for style. It certainly is for me.
For style.
Yeah. And it's to me with recommend, and
which you technically did.
I did, and I recommend it.
Sure.
I mean, look, there's not been a Bergman film that I haven't liked, but there's 3 off the top of my head that, saw. They're great. I won't recommend it because I don't really want to see them again because there were traumatic experiences to sit through.
Okay.
But this in a lot of ways is a great entry point into Bergman because I think it gives you, as you were saying before, that you bouncing around the sine waves. It gives you a really nice. It's a nice buffet of what he does, where his comedy goes, where his drama goes. visually, audially. You know, this would be a good starter Bergman film. One of the good starter Bergman films for me.
I am recommending it as well. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I've never seen a Bergman film, and I left now wanting to watch more of his films, which doesn't always happen that often.
But when it does, it's a pretty good
so
time.
I'm expecting a lighthearted romp from here on out.
I'm not sure if you should expect that, but at least you enjoyed this one.
Well, go watch Seventh Seal next.
Yeah. Good.
I was just
Steve-O.
going to say, I'm kind of in the same boat. First, I still haven't seen Seventh Seal, but first Bergman film I've seen.
Noob.
Really enjoyed it. Looking forward to more. And that's pretty much it. I recommend it, and I can't wait to watch whatever's next on the list.
Yeah, like you said, Chris, it is a good starter entry point into his work, I think. So yeah, I would recommend it. Maybe not as strongly, but yeah, it's still definitely worth a watch, and it's highly entertaining. And if you like sort of like you just said, E, if you get into it, it might make you want to watch his other stuff, some of which is a bit more serious for sure. But it's again a very, very enjoyable movie, and it's shorter. It's like less than 2 hours even, so the commitment on that isn't too much. And yeah, it's quite well done and pretty fucking cool. So I'll give it a 1.
Awesome.
Where does that leave us?
I think that leaves us with 9s across the board.
Is it? Okay,
Steve?
nice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's correct.
Awesome.
All right,
So
very nice.
I guess the aggregate score for this is a 9. And does anybody have anything else to say?
No?
No, man, just like based on our description, if you have not seen it or unfamiliar, definitely check it out because it's quite a good watch.
Excellent. I'm glad everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah, good call.
I was really excited to bring this, and I'm glad. I was really excited for this discussion. I really wanted to hear what you guys had to say.
Well done.
Oh,
And,
actually, if I might add, we are going to be doing
Yes,
a
that's
couple
true.
more international comedies this month, so check it out. Look forward to what's the next one?
We've got a couple of things on the
Cinema
list.
Paradiso.
Cinema Paradiso.
And I believe Delicatessen
Delicatessen.
is on
But
the,
not only are we doing a comedy month in April because randomly the attribution to April Fool's
Because
Day,
April Fool's.
we're doing an international film year.
Yeah, so throughout the next upcoming, we'll be doing non-American films.
Because we need to become as pretentious of movie critics as we can.
Mm.
And
Plus-
as we think we are.
Plus, we haven't seen enough international films. I don't think.
Yeah.
No, that's
True.
true.
Yeah, expanding horizons and
Join us,
starting
won't
with this one. Yes. Well, that's it for me, I guess.
All right, yeah.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you very much. I've been Chris Morgan here with Jonathan Emanzer,
Yep.
Stephen Amosi,
He's a magic man.
and Scott Thurlow.
I thought you were going to go with that thing from Adventure Time. Magic Man! And that's what I'll go with. Good night. See you next
Good
time.
night.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or Mott's?